What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatorito Boxing Show, and let's dive into the debacle that was Amanda Serrano and Nina Menke, the whole event in itself. You couldn't help but be happy for Puerto Rico, for the fan base, a culture, an island that has such a rich history within the sport of boxing, that has boxing greatness embedded in their culture, in their veins, and a storied history that is undeniable within the annals of boxing. People always refer to Miguel Cotto and throw Amanda Serrano in there, rightfully so, and Felix Tito Trinidad. But people fail to think of the greats of yesteryear because of the recency bias. But don't forget your Edwin Rosarios, your Hector Macho Camachos, and we can go on and on and on with many greats that have come out of the island that have done amazing things within the sport, for the sport. But their biggest star, hands down, has to be Felix Tito Trinidad, and he happened to be on hand at the event, and by far happened to be the best thing that happened during the entire event. Just seeing his smile, how humble he is, and the people's reaction, the way that people reacted to his presence, second to none. And that was a highlight of the event. An event that left more questions than answers. An event that was meant to be a tribute and a celebratory, a festive weekend and homecoming for Puerto Rico, to highlight their prospects, their contenders, their champions. And one of the greatest boxers to ever come out of the island, not just female boxer, but boxers in general, in Amanda Serrano. In the end, we ended up getting a decent build-up. But by the time the main event of the prelims came around, we had a Christopher Diaz who was coming back. And if you listened to my preview episode, he's one of the fights that I highlighted because I was very excited to see him come back. Very excited to have seen him added to this card. And I was excited to see him back in action. And I told you in the preview episode, I saw his opponent in Headley not being a threat whatsoever. This was a tune-up fight, a stay busy fight, a get the gears going for what should be a busy year for Christopher Diaz and get his gears going this 2024. A Headley Scott that came in to the ring with an 18-1 record, and a Christopher Diaz who is a very seasoned fighter who has challenged multiple champions and has taken his shot at gaining a championship in his own respect several times and has come short. in his attempts. But he's right there knocking on the door of greatness. When that card happened, it was almost foretelling of things to come in the second half of the show. We see a Headley Scott that pitter-pattered, slapped, and was gassed by the end of the first round. A fighter which looks like they got him from one of the local backyard boxing circles. I don't know what to call them. But he was like someone who just barely put on gloves for the first time, yelling every time he punched, or at least gasping. A Christopher Diaz showed up, who knew that this guy had nothing for him. He just stood in guard for the entirety of the first round, basically. Threw a couple feelers out there. By the second round, he unleashed that left hand and sent Scott flying. Scott answers the referee's count, and Christopher Diaz closes in on range, and again delivers a hammer of a punch, a knockout looping left hook that took Scott out of commission, basically. Christopher Diaz back to his winning ways. And again, we weren't supposed to expect a tough test, but this was telling as to what was on hand the rest of the way, sadly to say. The highlight for me was gonna be the championship fight and the unification, WBO unification bout between Rene Santiago, who defeated Kevin Vivas, the Nicaraguan fighter, a few months back, unifying against long-standing, long-reigning champion Jonathan "Bomba" Gonzalez, who had been out and away from boxing for quite a while. The fight was a scoring nightmare. It went from a technical fight to a tactical fight to a hesitant performance by both boxers. It was a scoring nightmare where momentum switched, very little to grasp onto, very little to take away in the end. Rene Santiago, in my opinion, had the harder punches, including multiple times during the fight. In the second part of the fight, around round 5, round 8, hurt Bomba Gonzalez, buzzed him, stunned him. And out of how little we were able to, that we had to discern between, those power punches were the telling part for me that, if anything, if this fight didn't end up being deemed a draw in the end, then I had it 115-113 for Santiago as the newly crowned champion. In the end, we ended up with scores of 116-112, 115-113, and 117-111 unanimous decision for Bomba Gonzalez. 117-111, immediate home cooking. 115-113, possibly the best card of the night. The 116-112. I mean, I guess. But the 115-113 should have been across the board. Maybe a 2-1 for Bomba Gonzalez if that's how they were going to give it to him. I can't really say home cooking, even though I did, but I can't really say home cooking because both Puerto Rican fighters fighting in front of their crowds for the ultimate glory of being crowned champion, unified champion of the division. In the end, the WBO Junior Flyweight championship remains around the waist of Bomba Gonzalez based on the scores that I just gave you. And the fight ended up leaving us with a feeling of wanting more, clamoring for a little bit more from both fighters, from both boxers. And it was very telling as to, it basically defined the night. It just left more questions than answers. Bomba Gonzalez, who says that he's unsure at the moment whether he's going to seek a unification against maybe Taraji. He didn't mention Sivenati Notsinga, who just regained his title after stopping Curiel. But he obviously would be seeking the big money fight against Kenshiro Taraji, who's the unified champion at that division. The other option is whether he vacates and moves up to 112, where Bam Rodriguez still holds 2 of the titles, where Ray Martinez still holds a WBC title, a division where I don't see Bomba Gonzalez having much effect. But nonetheless, that's his decision in the end. From there, we moved on to the co-main, which was the promoter of this event, Jake Paul. And that was supposed to be the entertainment of the night. And the real boxing affair was supposed to be the main event between Serrano and Mankey. And what we got was exactly what we got in Jake Paul's last outing against Andre August. Another overly or outmatched opponent that had no business being in there. If anything, I think even Headley Scott, who fought Christopher Diaz, would have given Jake Paul a tougher fight than what Ryan Borland did. We don't know these opponents. We've never heard of these opponents, but they keep selling it to you as if they are legitimate boxers, that Jake Paul is going around the world finding legit opposition so he could prove his body of work and his newly acquired skill set and boxing traits, and show you how serious he's taking the sport. Yet he goes and finds these opponents that nobody has ever heard of, that nobody knows. They are unranked, inactive, untested, unknown. And so he goes on and puts on a beatdown. And little did we know that the rabbit was about to be revealed from the hat at the conclusion of this fight. Because the people overall, by the time it got to this event, and with that knockout, were cheering, were on their feet, were just happy. Overall, and looking forward to the main event. Little did we know that we witnessed Jake Paul's stoppage of Ryan Borland in round 1, that we were witnessing our main event for the night. Because then the debacle came out that no main event was happening. There was no other fight. We had seen everything that we had tuned in for. The people that traveled the hotel, lodging accommodations, travel accommodations, people that traveled not just from all over the island, but from abroad, stateside and from abroad, just to witness this event. German fans that made the trip. People from Europe, people from South America, people from the UK that made the trip. In what was supposed to be a significant, meaningful main event. We instead get an Amanda Serrano who hid behind her sunglasses, fighting back tears of embarrassment, in my opinion, more so than shame, because this almost seemed like it was something that was bigger than her, something that she did not want to do to her people, to the boxing world. But she had no choice. Her hands were tied. Immediately, the commentators jumped to her defense rather than being disgusted with what was going on. And then we get a multitude of stories and storylines. The commentators say one thing, the zone says another. Depending on what broadcast you were listening to, they're saying something else. And then Jake Paul goes on and says something else. And I'm not sure what his partner's name is, but he's the co-chairman of the event of MVP Promotions. And he goes on to give another explanation. Maybe I should know his name. I don't. I can't think of it. And in the end, we end up hearing that Amanda Serrano had suffered damage to her cornea and had undergone numerous eye exams. And it was the villains in this story happened to be the doctors who did not allow Amanda Serrano to step into the ring. A injury to her cornea that took place 36 hours prior to this event. Meaning, they knew going into the weigh-in, you were not going to get an evaluation and clearance 1 minute prior to you stepping into the ring. It's just unthinkable for me to fathom that thought. They knew going into the weigh-ins. They knew going into, maybe it happened after the final press conference, but 36 hours later, while doing her hair, she suffers an accident to her cornea, damage to her cornea. The weigh-ins proceed, and we have an Amanda Serrano wearing sunglasses. No one catches on. Not a peep. You have governing bodies that sanctioned this fight to proceed. You have the Puerto Rican Boxing Commission, which medically cleared every single fighter to proceed with the weigh-ins. Post weigh-ins, the commission deems that the show is going to go on, and everybody that was there was going to proceed on to the show. The commission is on hand at the event, and the show proceeds. Hell, they allowed Headley Scott to take the ring. They allowed Ryan Borland to step into the ring against Jake Paul. They were basically clearing anything and everything. But the fact that the show went on and continued to garner attention. The buildup continued. And meanwhile, people are walking up to the gate and purchasing tickets on hand. Meanwhile, travel is still taking place. And the fight doesn't take place. Sad for Tito Trinidad, humbling of him to step into the ring and speak for Amanda Serrano, trying to quiet the boos from the crowd. Apparently there was 18,000 on hand. It did look like a jam-packed arena. Apparently 18,000 on hand. And Tito Trinidad, when he takes the mic or they put his face on the TV, on the screens, on the monitors, people go crazy. And they respect what he has to say. And he was the apologetic figure trying to get the people to stop booing at what was being presented to them. And Amanda Serrano next to Tito Trinidad fighting back tears, hiding behind the sunglasses, and everybody with sob faces and sad faces and sobbing. And then we get the story that this happened 36 hours prior. Then in the post-fight press conference, Jake Paul says, the chemical, while Amanda Serrano was on a run, on one of her final runs, the chemical that had been applied to her hair, the product, ran down into her eye and severely burned her cornea. A chemical so strong, according to Jake Paul, that when it got in Amanda Serrano's hands, you could visibly see burns on the skin of her hands. Wait a minute, but it didn't burn her scalp? You're telling me that this chemical that's so strong is being applied to her scalp? As if the skin is a different... That's just, well, don't talk about that. But the fact that it ended up mixing with sweat ended up causing a severe burn on her eye, and so much so that when she wiped it with her hand, it severely burned the skin of her hand. You could visibly see the burns on her hands. But not her scalp. That wasn't a question. And nobody pressed on that. So the answer was anybody who seeks a refund, they will go ahead and do so. And that was, as they said at the post-fight press conference, that was because Amanda Serrano wanted that done. 1.5 million or so at the gate. And they were willing to issue a full refund to everybody who seeks the refund approach. Puerto Rican people are some of the most happiest people. They will make and turn any situation that they can into a celebration. They are festive, they are loud, they are happy, they are celebratory. And they're not vindictive in that way where they're going to be like, yeah, screw you guys, I'm going to go get my refund. They had a great night and they're going to celebrate, and they probably party their asses off all night. Because this event gave them a reason to celebrate. But the product was subpar. The Puerto Rican people know that rich boxing history runs through their blood, through their veins. And for them to be saying at the post-fight press conference, we'll be back. They're not going to be so forgiving to be caught in this sham a second time. They'll support Amanda Serrano for sure, but you won't pull this on them a second time. That's going to be a tough sell. Where we're continuously being told by Jake Paul, and I have an episode, if you go back in my catalog, look at the episode that I put together. I'm trying to make a case to get behind Jake Paul's boxing career, and I'm on the fence. This yesterday just dissuaded me. Because he continues to tell you that they are going around seeking for the best opposition, the best opposition that he could find, and we end up with Andre August? We end up with Ryan Borland? And then he says, I feel sorry for the fans. I want to give them more. But these guys are just not lasting, as if he's just a juggernaut of a man just destroying people. If you really feel that confident and that comfortable, and the governing bodies are starting to sanction you fairly high, and as I put on the preview episode, I believe that some of the bodies have them ranked as high as 126 in the world of cruiserweights. So fight a top 200 cruiserweight. Fight a top 100 cruiserweight. Fight number 125 or number 127. But Headley Scott looks like they found him at a backyard boxing circuit. Ryan Borland, as someone who participates in boxing to lose weight as a hobby, not a professional boxer, even though he is a professional boxer with a resume. Unranked, unknown, inactive is what we continue to get. And little did we know that that was the main event that we were witnessing, and everybody jumped to the defense rather than questioning what was going on. Which shows you that everybody was in on it. And then the excuses come out. And the justifications. And we're supposed to be okay with it and just move on. It's sad because I was really looking forward to this, and I'm sure the rest of the world was as well. It's sad for Amanda Serrano. I hope that she is okay. Obviously, we know that it's an injury, and especially to the eye. You don't want an injury to be even more severe or for this to be a career-ending injury. But don't tell us that some chemical or product that you put on your scalp, which is your skin, going directly on your skin, is okay to be on one part of your body, but then it's burning your hands severely. Chemical burns to the hands. How stupid do you think people are? They should have just called it on Thursday or whenever they found out. Instead of taking the refund route, because they know that most people won't, so they're still going to retain a large portion of the money. It's just smart sham business people. Pull the fast one, and if we lose $500,000, well, we still made $1 million. And we got away with the card. Instead of having done it on Thursday, as soon as they found out, why take the risk and put her through risk if you really care about Amanda Serrano? Why put her through the whole thing and the exposure for you to just pull the carpet underneath everybody's feet right before the fight's supposed to start, and they never make way into the ring. Why? Well, because people would have stopped traveling, people would have stopped purchasing tickets because of ratings. People would have stopped subscribing to DAZN to see this. People that subscribe to DAZN specifically to witness this event. Of course. And now they could go on and say, well, look at the numbers. When they hit their highest, they're like, look at how high of a rating we were getting. Look at how high our gate revenue was. We just broke records. Including, I think they announced that they broke the WWE's record from a year ago when they were there with Bad Bunny. So now they can make an argument as to how big their promotional company is. And the losers are the fans, but oh well, we'll get you guys to buy the next ticket that we put on. Because on the next one, we might have maybe Jake Paul and Ryan Garcia, because now they're feuding again on social media. Sad for Amanda Serrano. I feel really bad. I feel really bad for the people that were in attendance. I feel bad that Tito Trinidad was put in that position to have to show his face and defense for this. And for the Bomba Gonzalez and Rene Santiago, I think that ended up being the highlight of the night. And, well, it left a lot of questions unanswered, but that's normal for what was basically the only legit boxing match that I saw out of the entire night, or at least with implications, with serious boxing implications, a real boxing match. That where the styles didn't complement one another, where both boxers wanted to do more but were unable to. Their styles never really developed. Their game plans never really got underway. And time got the best of them. Next thing they knew, the fight was done and over with. And both of them performed subpar, in my opinion, with a lot more questions left on the table than answers. So if they're able to run this back in a different venue, I think it would be a little more decisive in a different commission, in a different venue, and they get to run this immediately back. I think it would make for a better match now that they both saw what each have, and potentially would lead to a stoppage because Santiago was landing the better of the power punches of the two fighters, with Bomba Gonzalez landing some decent combinations and some decent work to the body, which I think now that they know and saw each other and ran into each other, a second fight would not be as awkward as this one that we witnessed, or as dull as this fight was. I think it would be more action-packed and they would get immediately right to work. They're good boxers, good fighters, and we've seen them perform otherwise. We've seen them perform excellently in prior fights, where this was an oddity for us to witness. These two fighters can box, they can fight, they can put on a show, they perform well. It just didn't happen against one another. But the title remains around Bomba Gonzalez, and should this not happen again, well, Rene Santiago will continue climbing up and maintaining a seat at the table, and should, in case Bomba Gonzalez vacates, then he'll be right in line for another title shot and hopefully get his hands around the full version instead of the interim. For Bomba Gonzalez, well, he could either pursue the money fight with Taraji, go against Ivanati Notsinga, or vacate and move up to 112, where I see him very limited against what he could do with opposition up there. That seems to be a little bit stronger-handed, stronger punchers up there. So that was the legit fight of the night for me. Everything else was the circus that is and continues to be anything that surrounds Jake Paul. And it is what it is. We'll see. I mean, I told you guys on that episode, go back and check out the episode that I dedicated to him and his career after his fight with Andre August, and tell me what you think, because I've been on the fence about him and I'm quickly about to check out. I've tried to make the case for him, and I could definitely see the naysayers' case that are opposed to what he's doing. But I do my part in trying to do my best for him, including in the preview episode where I praise him for the stuff that he's doing positively within boxing. But then we get this sham presented to us as a legit fight. So it sucks. We'll keep an eye out, monitor what Amanda Serrano continues, what she's going to have to go on. It looks like she's going to be hanging him up from what people are saying, or at least in the post-fight press conference from the comments that were made, that she's looking to retire in Puerto Rico and do a farewell fight there, which obviously will sell well on her own. Hopefully, if she's no longer with MVP, I'm sure she'll finish out her career with them, but she could do just fine on her own now that, yes, to the credit of Jake Paul, they catapulted her into a draw. But she's been doing that work all along. She just needed that backing. She got it, and she continues to do the work on her own. I think she could sell out an arena just perfectly fine by herself now against anybody that she gets in. Alicia Baumgartner's been calling her out. Maybe this fight with Mankey will be run back, or will still take place, and hopefully this was a rescheduled postponement rather than this is done and we'll move on to somebody else. And of course, her fight with Katie Taylor still looms. Her rematch with Katie Taylor still looms. And I foresee her having maybe 3 or so fights, 2 to 3 fights, and then possibly hanging them up and calling it a day. Even though she's still young, she is very seasoned in her boxing and her combat sports career, because remember, she also participated in MMA and has participated in MMA in the recent years. So I leave you guys with that. Disappointing night, disappointing event, disappointing episode for me to put forth for you, but you let me know what you think, and if I'm being too negative, then let me know. But it's just, that's how I saw it. I'll leave you guys with that, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. Stay safe. Talk to you all soon.